My name is Dr. James Calloway, and after 30 years of watching people walk into my office, I can tell you something that will sit uncomfortably with you for the rest of the day. Your dinner plate after 50 is a clock, and most people, without ever knowing it, are quietly setting that clock to run out early. Not tomorrow, not next week, but sooner than the number on your driver's license would ever suggest. Because the food you put on that plate tonight is not just fuel, it is an instruction. It tells your body whether to build muscle or burn it, whether to store fat around your organs or release it, whether to keep your legs strong enough to carry you up the stairs at 80, or to slowly, quietly, take that ability away from you one dinner at a time. And here is what nobody warned you about. After 50, the same meal that kept you lean at 30 starts working against you. The exact same plate. The exact same portion. Suddenly the scale climbs, the belly grows, and you swear you are eating less than you ever have. So let me ask you 3 questions, and I want you to actually sit with them, because the answers are going to change how you eat for the rest of your life. First, why do the strict diets that everyone recommends after 50 end up burning your muscle instead of your fat, leaving you softer and weaker even as the number on the scale drops? Second, why can a breakfast that every magazine calls healthy keep your blood sugar elevated for the entire day, quietly wearing down your body from the inside? And third, why is the hunger you feel at 9 at night not a failure of willpower at all, but a hormone doing exactly what you accidentally trained it to do? I am going to answer every one of these questions before we are done. Every single one. I am going to hand you a full week of eating. 7 days, real food, food that tastes like food and not like cardboard, that lets you lose weight, keep your strength, and still enjoy sitting down at the table. But if you want to protect your future, if you want to still be walking on your own 2 legs and cooking your own meals 20 years from now, do this small thing for me right now. Subscribe and tap that like button, because what is coming next is the part your doctor never had the 15 minutes to explain to you in the office. Stay with me. Now, let me take you back into my clinic, into a room where I have had this same conversation more times than I can count. A woman sits across from me. 58 years old. Sharp. Funny. Does everything right. She tells me she has cut her portions in half. She skips breakfast most days. She has cut out bread, cut out pasta, cut out the little things she used to love. And she is heavier than she was 2 years ago. She looks at me and she says the sentence I have heard maybe 1,000 times. Dr. J, I am doing everything right, and my body is punishing me. And here is the truth I have to give her, the same one I am going to give you. She looks at me and she says the sentence I have heard maybe 1,000 times. Is Dr. J, I am doing everything right, and my body is punishing me. And here is the truth I have to give her, the same one I am going to give you. Your body is not punishing you. Your body is following the exact instructions you have been giving it. You just did not know what those instructions meant. Here is the nuance most people miss. After the age of 50, and even more so after 60, your body goes through a shift that has almost nothing to do with laziness and everything to do with biology. There is a process quietly happening under your skin right now as you listen to me, called sarcopenia. That is the slow loss of muscle tissue that begins somewhere in your 40s and accelerates with every passing decade. That is the slow loss of muscle tissue that begins somewhere in your 40s and accelerates with every passing decade. And here is the part that will make you sit up. Starting around 50, the average person loses somewhere between 3 and 8% of their muscle mass every 10 years. And after 70, that number climbs faster still. Muscle is not just for lifting things. Muscle is the single largest place where your body burns sugar. Muscle is the engine of your metabolism, so when you lose it, your entire furnace shrinks. You burn fewer calories sitting still. You burn fewer calories sleeping. You burn fewer calories doing absolutely nothing. Muscle is the engine of your metabolism, so when you lose it, your entire furnace shrinks. You burn fewer calories sitting still. You burn fewer calories sleeping. You burn fewer calories doing absolutely nothing. And this is why the woman in my office, eating half of what she used to, is still gaining weight. Her engine got smaller, and nobody told her the fuel needs had changed. Now here is where the ordinary diet advice becomes genuinely dangerous. When a person over 50 goes on a harsh, low-calorie, low-protein diet, the body does something clever and cruel at the same time. It does lose weight, the scale drops, everybody cheers. But listen to me very carefully because this is the trap. Up to a quarter of the weight lost on an aggressive crash diet after 50 comes not from fat, but from muscle. You are burning the very engine that keeps you lean. You are burning the very tissue that keeps you standing upright and stable on your feet. So you get lighter and weaker at the same time. And when the diet ends, as every diet eventually ends, the fat comes back. But the muscle does not come back on its own. You have to earn it back, slowly, and most people never do. So each round of dieting leaves you with less muscle and more fat than before. This is the cruel arithmetic I have watched destroy the bodies of good, disciplined people who thought they were doing everything right. And I want you to hold on to that image, because while you have been sitting here listening to me, something has been happening quietly in your body that a single symptom can reveal. If you have noticed lately that standing up from a low chair takes a little push from your hands, or that you grab the railing on the stairs when you never used to, that is not just age. That is your engine sending you a signal, and I will tell you exactly what to do about it in a few minutes. But first, you need to understand the second half of the trap, the part that happens on your fork before it ever reaches your mouth. Because here is something they rarely tell you in the doctor's office in those rushed 15-minute visits. Not all calories give your body the same instruction. A calorie is a unit of energy, yes, but your body does not experience a spoonful of sugar the same way it experiences a piece of grilled fish, even if a laboratory says they carry the same energy. And this is where the entire industry of calorie counting quietly falls apart for people over 50. You can eat your allotted number of calories, do it perfectly, and still be flooding your body with the exact signal that tells it to store fat and hold on to it for dear life. That signal has a name. It is called insulin. And after 50, your relationship with insulin changes in a way that almost no one explains to you until it is already a problem. Let me put it plainly, the way I would to a patient sitting across the desk from me. Every time you eat, especially foods that break down quickly into sugar, the bread, the pastries, the juice you thought was healthy, the bowl of cereal every morning, your blood sugar rises. And after 50, your relationship with insulin changes in a way that almost no one explains to you until it is already a problem. Let me put it plainly, the way I would to a patient sitting across the desk from me. Every time you eat, especially foods that break down quickly into sugar, the bread, the pastries, the juice you thought was healthy, the bowl of cereal every morning, your blood sugar rises, and your body releases insulin to pull that sugar out of the blood and into your cells. That is normal, that is healthy. But as we age, and especially if we have been eating this way for decades, our cells slowly stop listening to insulin. They become, as I tell my patients, hard of hearing. So the body has to shout louder. It releases more and more insulin to do the same job. And here is the ugly part. Insulin is the master fat storage hormone. When it is high, your body physically cannot burn fat. It is locked. You could be eating very little and still not lose an ounce because the door to your fat stores is bolted shut by an insulin level that never comes down. And here is the ugly part. Insulin is the master fat storage hormone. When it is high, your body physically cannot burn fat. It is locked. You could be eating very little and still not lose an ounce because the door to your fat stores is bolted shut by an insulin level that never comes down. A colleague of mine, an endocrinologist I have trusted for 20 years, put it to me over coffee in a way I have never forgotten. He said, "Russ Jim, we spend all our time telling people to eat less when the real question is how often and how high they spike." And that landed on me, because in my own practice I had seen it in 9 out of 10 patients over 60 who came to me frustrated. They were not gluttons. They were not weak. They were riding a blood sugar roller coaster from morning to night, spike after spike after spike, and every one of those spikes was another dose of the fat-locking hormone. So when you feel that crushing hunger at 9 at night, that hunger that feels like a personal failure, it is not. It is the crash on the far side of a spike you created hours earlier. Your morning cereal, that innocent bowl, wrote a check that your evening body was forced to cash in the form of ravenous hunger. So here is the ground we now stand on, before I hand you the first day of your week. Two enemies: the slow, silent loss of muscle that shrinks your engine, and the daily flood of insulin that bolts the door on your fund. Beat those two, and weight loss after 50 stops being a war of willpower and becomes almost mechanical. And the beautiful part, the part that will make you exhale with relief, is that fighting both of them at once does not require starving. It requires eating differently. More protein, not less food. Fewer spikes, not fewer joys. Let me show you exactly what that looks like, starting with Monday morning. You wake up on Monday, and the first decision of your day is the most important one because it sets the hormonal tone for the next 12 hours. Most people over 50 start the day with the worst possible thing for their situation: a fast-digesting, sugar-releasing breakfast on an empty stomach. Toast and jam, cereal and milk, a pastry, and a sweet coffee. Every one of those is a starting gun for the blood sugar roller coaster. So here is what I want on your plate instead. 3 eggs, cooked however you enjoy them, in a little olive oil. A handful of spinach wilted in the same pan. Half an avocado. And if you want, a small serving of berries. Not a bowl of them. A small serving. That is it. Now listen to what that plate does. The eggs give you roughly 18 to 20 grams of protein, which is the raw material your body needs to defend your muscle against sarcopenia. The fat in the avocado and the fiber in the spinach slow everything down, so your blood sugar rises gently, like a hill, instead of spiking like a cliff. No cliff means no crash. No crash means no ravenous hunger at 11 in the morning driving you to the vending machine. And here is the promise I will make you about that breakfast, from 30 years of watching it work. People tell me, again and again, that they simply are not hungry for lunch when they eat this way. That is not a coincidence, and it is not magic. It is protein and fat and fiber doing what fast sugar can never do, keeping you steady. And here is the promise I will make you about that breakfast, from 30 years of watching it work. People tell me, again and again, that they simply are not hungry for lunch when they eat this way. That is not a coincidence, and it is not magic. It is protein and fat and fiber doing what fast sugar can never do, keeping you steady. Now, some of you are already thinking, but Dr. J, I have always heard that eggs are bad for the heart. Back, there is the ghost of advice from 40 years ago, still haunting your kitchen. Let me put it to rest. The research has moved on, and for most people, whole eggs eaten as part of a real food breakfast are one of the finest tools we have for holding onto muscle and controlling appetite. I have watched patients well into their 70s thrive on exactly this. Short of a specific condition your own doctor has flagged, that plate is your friend. But here is the part I need you to hear, because it is where most people quietly sabotage themselves without ever realizing it. I have watched patients well into their 70s thrive on exactly this. Short of a specific condition your own doctor has flagged, that plate is your friend. But here is the part I need you to hear, because it is where most people quietly sabotage themselves without ever realizing it. You think that swapping your sugary breakfast for eggs is enough. You think you have solved it, and you have opened the door to a far more cunning problem. The one hiding in what you drink and what you snack on between meals. Because you can build the perfect plate and then destroy the entire effort with a single large glass of juice, or 2 sweetened coffees, or a handful of dried fruit you believed was healthy. Liquid sugar and concentrated sugar hit your bloodstream faster than almost anything solid. They are the silent spike, the one you never account for because you do not think of a drink as a meal. In my practice, when a patient swears they are doing everything right and still cannot lose weight, the culprit is hiding in the glass more often than on the plate. So on Monday and every day after, your drinks are water, tea, or black coffee. Sweetness, if you truly need it, comes from the food itself, not poured on top. Now let me take you to Monday's midday meal, because the rhythm of the day matters as much as the content. Around noon, or whenever your real hunger arrives, and with that breakfast, real hunger, not the fake crash hunger, will arrive later than you expect. You build what I call the strong plate. Half of it is vegetables, any vegetables you enjoy, cooked or raw. A quarter of it is protein, roughly the size and thickness of your own palm. Chicken, fish, beef, lentils, whatever you like. And the last quarter is a slow carbohydrate, a small portion of brown rice, or beans, or a sweet potato. That ratio is not arbitrary. It is engineered. The vegetables and protein blunt the rise from the carbohydrate, so even the rice on your plate arrives in your blood as a gentle hill instead of a spike. You get to eat the carbohydrate. You just get to eat it in a way that does not bolt the fat door shut. And I want to stop here and give you the single most useful thing I have ever told a patient about portions, because it removes all the weighing and measuring that drives people to quit within a week. Your own hand is your measuring cup. Your palm is your protein portion. Your cupped hand is your carbohydrate portion. Your whole fist is your vegetable portion, and you can have 2 of those. Your thumb is your portion of added fats and oils. Your hand grows and shrinks with your body, which means it is calibrated to you and to no one else. I have had patients in their 80s with failing eyesight who could no longer read a food label, manage their entire diet with nothing but their own hand as the guide. Short. It is the most reliable tool you will ever own, and you cannot lose it. By the time Monday evening arrives, something is happening inside you that I want you to be aware of, because it is the quiet reward for a day done right. Because you did not spike your blood sugar all day, your insulin has had long, calm stretches where it stayed low. And in those low stretches, this is the part that matters. Your body was finally allowed to open the fat door and burn what it had been hoarding. You spent the afternoon quietly burning fat, not because you starved, but because you stopped shouting at your body with sugar every 2 hours. So dinner on Monday can be simple and satisfying. A piece of salmon or another fatty fish, a large pile of roasted vegetables, and a small drizzle of olive oil. The fish gives you protein to guard your muscle overnight and the healthy fats that calm inflammation. And here is a nuance almost nobody tells you. Eating your last real meal a few hours before bed, rather than right before you lie down, gives your body a long overnight window with low insulin. That window is where a great deal of the fat burning quietly happens, in the dark, while you sleep, asking nothing of your willpower at all. Which brings me to something that has nothing to do with food on the surface, and everything to do with it underneath. Because here is the domino nobody sees falling. One bad night of sleep does not just make you tired. It reaches directly into your kitchen the next day and rearranges the whole thing without your permission. When you sleep poorly, 2 hunger hormones swing hard in the wrong direction. The one that tells you to eat gets louder, and the one that tells you to stop gets quieter. And your stress hormone, cortisol, climbs and stays elevated, and elevated cortisol pushes your body to store fat precisely where you least want it, deep in the belly, wrapped around your organs. So a person can follow the perfect Monday, then sleep 4 broken hours, and wake up on Tuesday with the cravings of a teenager and the fat storage signals of someone under siege. I have seen disciplined patients blame their appetite when the real thief was their pillow. So as we build Tuesday, understand that the 7 or 8 hours in the dark are part of your diet, whether you counted them or not. So on Tuesday, we lean into that understanding. Tuesday morning, if you woke rested, you might try something I use with many of my patients, a slightly later, protein-heavy first meal. This is not the dangerous skipping breakfast to starve that I warned you about. This is a gentle, natural lengthening of your overnight low insulin window, so long as your first meal, when it comes, is built on protein and not on sugar. A large plain yogurt, the full fat kind, not the sweetened cups that are dessert in disguise with a scatter of nuts and a few berries. That gives you protein, fat, fiber, and a small amount of natural sweetness, all arriving slowly. For those of you who feel shaky or unwell going even a little longer without food, and some of you will, and that is perfectly real, you simply eat your protein breakfast at your normal time. This is not a test of endurance. It is not a competition. Anyone who tells you that suffering is the price of health is selling you something. Let me pause on that, because it matters more than any single meal. The whole point of this week is that you do not have to lose your mind to lose weight. So much of the diet world is built on misery, on the idea that if it does not hurt, it is not working. In 30 years, I have watched misery fail every single time in the long run. The patients who kept their weight off, who kept their strength into their 80s, were never the ones who suffered the hardest. They were the ones who found a way of eating they could actually live with. Enjoyment is not the enemy of results. Enjoyment is what makes results last. So yes, there is room in this week for the foods you love. There is room for the glass of wine on the weekend, for the piece of dark chocolate after dinner, for the family meal that breaks every rule. The difference between the person who succeeds and the person who quits is not that one has more discipline. It is that one built a life they could keep, and the other built a prison they eventually escaped from straight into the refrigerator. Tuesdays midday and evening follow the same strong plate logic, but let me use Tuesday to hand you the vegetables most people neglect, because there is a specific reason to eat them after 50. Leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower, and above all the humble handful of beans and lentils. These carry the fiber that feeds the bacteria in your gut, and that gut, that vast community living inside you, is far more involved in your weight and your blood sugar than we ever understood before. A colleague who studies this told me plainly that the difference between a person who processes a meal cleanly and a person who spikes in stores can come down in part to the health of that inner garden. So on Tuesday, a lunch of lentil soup with plenty of vegetables and a dinner of chicken thighs with a mountain of roasted broccoli is not just filling. It is feeding the very system that helps you burn what you eat. And beans, I will note with the driest possible affection, are the cheapest longevity food on earth, which is a fact the supplement industry would very much prefer you did not dwell on. Now here is where I need to stop you, because you think that cutting sugar is the finish line. You think if you just quit the sweets, the war is won, and you have walked straight past a more coming enemy, one hiding under a health halo so bright it blinds nearly everyone. I am talking about the foods marketed as diet foods, the low-fat versions, which almost always replace the fat they removed with sugar and starch to make them taste like anything at all. The granola bars that are candy bars wearing a hiking costume. The smoothies the size of a bucket that carry more sugar than a can of soda. The flavored coffees that are dessert in a cup. In my practice, these health halo foods have derailed more sincere efforts than junk food ever did, because with junk food at least people know they are cheating. With these, people believe they are being virtuous while quietly spiking themselves all day long. So as we move into Wednesday, I want you carrying a new kind of suspicion, not of food, but of packaging. The louder a package shouts about being healthy, the more carefully you should read what is actually inside it. Wednesday is your midweek reset, and I want to use it to teach you the single most powerful trick I know for controlling a spike without changing what you eat at all. It is the order in which you eat. Listen to me closely, because this costs you nothing and works immediately. If you eat your vegetables and your protein first, and save the carbohydrate for the end of the meal, your blood sugar rises far more gently than if you had eaten the same exact food in the opposite order. Same plate, same calories, same everything, only the sequence changed. The fiber and protein you ate first form a kind of buffer in your stomach, so the carbohydrate that follows is released slowly instead of all at once. I have had patients cut their after-meal blood sugar rise substantially with nothing more than this. Eat the salad and the chicken first, the bread and the potato last. So on Wednesday, at every meal, practice the order. Vegetables and protein lead. Carbohydrate follows. It is such a small thing, and it is one of the most quietly powerful things in this entire week. Wednesday's plate itself can be a little indulgent, precisely because you now have the tools to indulge intelligently. Perhaps a lean steak, a large salad dressed with olive oil and vinegar, and a small serving of potatoes eaten last. That vinegar, by the way, is another quiet ally. A small amount of acid with a meal blunts the blood sugar rise further still, which is why so many traditional cuisines pair their starches with something sour or fermented. The pickle beside the sandwich, the sauerkraut beside the meat, the squeeze of lemon over everything. Our grandmothers were doing metabolic science without a single instrument, and we spent a generation laughing at them before the laboratories caught up. So on Wednesday evening, eat the steak, enjoy it fully, and lead with the vegetables. Finish with the vinegar-dressed salad, and let the small potato come last. You are eating like a person, not like a person. And you are still burning fat while you do it. This concludes the first half of our journey. Stay tuned for part 2, where we conquer the weekend and lock in your lifelong strength. By Thursday, if you have followed even most of this, your body has begun to shift in ways you can feel before the scale confirms them. The afternoon energy crashes soften. The desperate 9 o'clock hunger loosens its grip. Your clothes begin, ever so slightly, to fit differently around the middle before the number on the scale has moved much at all. And that is because you are trading fat for a body that holds less water and less inflammation. In my practice, this is the point where patients call me, cautiously hopeful, saying they feel like themselves again. And I always tell them the same thing. That feeling, the steady energy, the quiet stomach, the clear head. That feeling is your insulin behaving, your blood sugar steady, your engine running clean for the first time in years. The weight loss is real, but it is almost the least of what you have bought yourself. So Thursday, let me hand you the food that fights the fiercest battle of all against sarcopenia, that muscle loss I told you about at the start. Protein at every meal, not one big steak at dinner and nothing else all day. Your aging body cannot store a protein surplus the way a young body can. It uses protein in the moment and then loses interest. So the goal is a solid dose of protein spread across all 3 meals, roughly a palm-sized serving at each. Eggs or yogurt in the morning, fish or chicken or beans at midday, meat or fish again at night. This steady, all-day supply of protein is what tells your muscles over and over to hold their ground against the years. I have watched patients in their late 70s actually rebuild strength they thought was gone forever, simply by eating enough protein and moving their bodies a little. The muscle is not destined to disappear. It disappears when you starve it, feed it, and it fights for you. And now I have to tell you the thing I have been building toward this entire time. The fact that sits at the very center of everything, because it turns the whole ordinary story of dieting upside down. Everything I have told you so far, the protein, the meal order, the low insulin windows, all of it points to one truth that almost no one over 50 has ever been told plainly. The goal of eating well after 50 is not to be thin, it is to be strong. A thin, weak body is far more dangerous in your 70s and 80s than a slightly heavier, strong one. Here is what I have witnessed with my own eyes, more times than I care to count. The frail patient who ate almost nothing, proud of staying slim, who falls once, breaks a hip, and never fully returns to their own life again. And beside them, the sturdier patient with strong legs and good muscle who falls the same way and gets back up. The difference between those two futures was not the number on the scale, it was the muscle underneath the skin. That is the great secret hiding inside this entire week. You are not on a weight loss plan. You are on a strength preservation plan that happens to remove fat as a side effect, and that changes everything about which choices matter. Which is why, when we reach Friday, I want you to think of food as an investment in your own 2 legs. Friday can be lighter and social. This is the start of the weekend after all, and I told you we would not build a prison. A big vegetable-heavy meal, plenty of protein, olive oil, and if Friday night is when you enjoy a glass of wine with your family, then have it, with food, after you have eaten your protein and your vegetables, so that even the wine arrives on a full and buffered stomach, rather than an empty one. A dry red or white, 1 glass, sipped slowly with a meal, is a very different thing from 3 glasses on an empty stomach late at night. The dose and the timing are everything. I am not here to take the wine from your hand. I am here to make sure the wine is not quietly undoing the 4 days of good work behind it. And in my practice, the patients who lasted were never the ones who swore off every pleasure. They were the ones who learned to place their pleasures inside a structure that could absorb them. So let Friday's dinner be something you actually look forward to. Grilled chicken or fish, a large colorful salad, roasted vegetables with a little cheese if you like cheese, and yes, that glass of wine, and even a square or two of dark chocolate afterward. Dark chocolate, the kind that is more bitter than sweet, carries very little sugar and a good deal of the compounds that behave kindly toward your blood vessels. Notice what is happening across this whole week. I keep handing you back the foods that other diets take away. The eggs, the wine, the chocolate, the steak, the potato eaten last. Because the trick was never in banning the food. The trick was in the protein, the portions, the order, and the timing. Get those 4 right, and the list of forbidden foods shrinks down to almost nothing. That is what it means to eat vikusno and still lose weight. That is what it means to stop losing your mind over every bite. Now Saturday. Saturday is where most diets go to their fatal end. Because Saturday is the day of gatherings, of restaurants, of the food other people cook and set in front of you. And here is what the harsh, all-or-nothing diets get catastrophically wrong. They teach you that one indulgent meal is a failure, a collapse, a reason to give up entirely. So a person eats one slice of cake at a birthday, decides the whole week is ruined, and eats the rest of the cake, then the whole weekend, then abandons the effort by Monday. I have watched this exact spiral swallow good, determined people whole. So let me give you the reframe that saved so many of my patients. One meal does not make you fat, just as one workout does not make you fit. Your body responds to the pattern, not to the single moment. One rich restaurant dinner on Saturday, inside a week of steady, protein-forward, low-spike eating, is completely absorbed by that pattern. It vanishes into the average. The danger was never the slice of cake. The danger was the story you told yourself afterward. So, on Saturday, when you go out, use the tools you now own without even thinking about them. Order the protein and the vegetables first. Enjoy the bread, but do not sit and eat the entire basket on an empty stomach before your food arrives. That is the pure spike, the worst possible way to begin. Have the dessert if you truly want it. Share it if you can, and eat it at the end of a full meal, so it lands softly instead of hard. Drink water between any alcoholic drinks. And then, this is the part that matters most. You wake up on Sunday, and you simply return to the pattern. No punishment. No starvation to make up for it. No skipping meals and guilt, which only drives the next spike and the next crash. You just eat your eggs, you lead with your vegetables, you keep your protein high, and the week absorbs Saturday the way the ocean absorbs a single stone. This flexibility is not a weakness in the plan. It is the entire reason the plan survives contact with real life, and the rigid plans do not. Sunday, then, is your day of gentle preparation, the quiet engine room of the entire week. Because here is a truth I have learned watching thousands of people try and fail and try again. Willpower is not something you should have to rely on when you are tired and hungry at 6 in the evening. Willpower is a fuel tank that empties over the course of a day, and it is nearly always empty at exactly the moment you most need it. So the winners do not outmuscle their hunger every night. They arrange things so the hunger never catches them defenseless. On Sunday, cook. Roast a large tray of vegetables. Boil a batch of eggs. Cook extra chicken or fish. Portion some beans and lentils. Put them in the refrigerator where you can see them. Because when Wednesday evening arrives and you come home drained and hungry, the difference between a good choice and a bad one is not your character. It is whether the good choice is already cooked and waiting, or whether it requires 40 minutes of effort you do not have. I have said this to patients for 30 years, and I will say it to you. You do not rise to the level of your willpower, you fall to the level of your preparation. Fill the refrigerator on Sunday, and you will make good choices all week without ever feeling like a hero. So let me draw the whole week together so you carry it out of here as one clear picture rather than 7 separate days. Every morning, protein first, and no liquid sugar, ever. Every meal, half the plate vegetables, a palm of protein, and a small slow carbohydrate eaten last, after the vegetables and the protein have gone first. Protein at all 3 meals, not hoarded into one, because your aging muscle can only use it in the moment. Long, calm windows between meals, so your insulin can fall and the fat door can open. Water, tea, and black coffee as your drinks. Sleep guarded as fiercely as any meal because the pillow reaches into the kitchen. And one flexible, joyful meal on the weekend that the pattern quietly absorbs. That is the whole thing. That is a week that lets you eat like a person, lose the fat, and, far more importantly, keep the strength in your legs for the decades still ahead of you. And now I want to bring you all the way back to where we started, to that plate I called a clock. Because I told you at the very beginning that your dinner plate after 50 is a clock, and that most people are quietly setting it to run out early. Here is what I did not tell you then. That clock runs in both directions. The very same plate that can shorten your years, the sugar-spiking, muscle-starving plate, is the plate you now know how to turn around. Every meal you eat from this day forward is a small turn of that clock, either winding it down toward frailty and a walker and a life that shrinks year by year, or winding it forward toward a body strong enough to carry you, on your own 2 legs, into a future you actually want to live in. The woman in my office, the one who thought her body was punishing her, I put her on exactly this week. Protein first. Order at every meal, sleep guarded, Saturday forgiven. And 6 months later, she walked into my office. And for the first time in years, she did not reach for the arm of the chair to lower herself down. She just sat. Small thing, enormous thing. That is the clock turning the other way. You have everything you need now. Not a diet you will abandon by February, but a way of eating you can carry for the rest of your life. One that tastes good, one that keeps you strong, one that never asks you to lose your mind to lose the weight. My name is Dr. James Calloway, and I have spent 30 years watching people set that clock. Today, I have handed you the key to wind it the right way. Use it at your very next meal, because there is no better time than the plate in front of you now. Take care of your strength, and it will take care of you.